Okay, so we're going to look at some questions from for your first semester practice tests that come from Chapter 2. So Chapter 2 is all about expressions and equations and being able to simplify, manipulate, and solve. So while we do this probably every day in one way or another, you probably have some questions about it. So let's look at our first problem that you will find on your practice test. And it's asking me to solve for x, but it's a multi-step equation. It's got some distribution in it, and it's got this negative here that I've got to figure out what to do with. So as I'm looking here, I'm going to see that the first thing I need to do is distribute my negative 3. So the negative 3 is going to be distributed to the x and the positive 3. So negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times positive 3 is a negative 9. And then I have this pesky little negative here. Now, if you missed it, chances are you probably said, okay, I'm going to make that a negative 8x, and then you wrote down negative 4. But what you're forgetting is that there's a negative 1 right there. And so I've got to distribute that negative 1 to both terms that are inside that parentheses. So negative 1 times 8x is a negative 8x, which you most likely got. But what you probably forgot to do is take this negative 1 and multiply it by the negative 4. And negative 1 times negative 4 is a positive 4. And then that's just going to equal negative 12x. So if you missed it, I would be willing to say that right there is probably where you went wrong. So you should look on your paper right now and see if that is a positive 4 or a negative 4. Now, assuming that you made it this far, the next thing that we would need to do is look at combining like terms. So remember, I can only combine the terms that are on the same side. So I'm going to look over here and I'm going to see are there any terms that I can put together. In order to combine them, they have to have the same variable raised to the same power. So these have the same variable, negative 3x, negative 8x, negative 3x minus 8x is a negative 11x. And then you've got a negative 9 that's a constant, and a positive 4 that's a constant, which I can put those together to get negative 5. And then anything on the other side can go together, but it's only that one term, so I can just keep equals negative 12x. So now I have a simple two-step equation, but I've got a negative 11x here and a negative 12x here. Notice that they're on separate sides of the equal sign. I can't just combine them and get negative 23x. I've got to move one of them or the other. Because I want to think smarter, not harder, and this one is already on the side by itself, it makes more sense in my head to move the negative 11x. So using inverse operations, I'm going to add 11x to this side, which means I have to add 11x to this side. And as I do that, those are going to cancel one another out, and I'm left with a negative 5. Don't forget your negative. And then negative 12 plus 11 is a negative 1x. You can put that 1 there if you want to. If you would rather not, then that's okay too, but you have to put the negative. So now I'm going to divide by negative 1 because it's inverse operations, not inverse of numbers. So divide by negative 1, and those negative 1s are going to cancel out. And negative 5 divided by negative 1 gives me a positive 5. So 5 is going to be equal to x. So as we solved that equation, we had to distribute, not once but twice, remembering that there's a negative 1 there. Okay. Once we distributed, we were able to combine like terms that were on the same side. Once we got our terms combined, then we were able to use our inverse operations to move our variables to one side and then use inverse operations to solve for the variable by itself. So hopefully you were able to get that one correct, but if not, you've hopefully found your mistake.